good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Portsmouth Committee on Arts and Nonprofits, Monday, March 21st. Looking forward to getting back to work on a lot of our projects. The agenda has been circulated in advance. We do have one welcome here today. We have Nancy's successor who's going to be here. So Sean, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Sean Clancy, replacing or attempting to replace Nancy. It's very big shoes to fill, but I've been, this is week 2 for me on the job. And I've spent the last 5.5 years at Great Bay Community College, responsible for workforce development and business engagement. And I've been living in Portsmouth since 2013. Before that, 10 years in Durham. So definitely Seacoast regular.
Well, welcome to the group. It's nice, really great to have you here. Thank you. I don't know. I've been trying to get a quorum in person, and Beth was really kind to come in today and try and get us to a quorum, but I don't know that we're quite there. So we're going to not be able to do the minute approval. We'll put that off into the future, but we have the mayor with us today, and I wanted to invite him to come on forward and say a few words. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Russ, for having me. Thank you to everyone who is serving. Can you hear me?
Yes.
On Zoom? Well,
No, I think the Zoom can you guys hear? All right, good.
I'm incredibly happy that everyone, well, the work that this committee has done, it's a bright spot out of COVID, and we try to take those bright spots where we can in terms of things that we will carry on much beyond this. I look forward to this being made as a standing committee. I would expect that to be a recommendation out of the governance committee, because arts and the nonprofits are integral to what we do in Portsmouth. It's something that, you know, lucky enough to grow up in Portsmouth, I have always thought that every community cares about the arts and paying your rent on this earth, meaning the nonprofit world. That it's as important as, you know, the work that you do to maybe pay your mortgage, making the world brighter for everyone that is here, is something that I took it, you know, for granted, I think, you know, in times away from Portsmouth. So I think that's what makes Portsmouth special. I'm reminded of something my father, he might have made up this quote, he might have stolen it, but this came about when we were discussing the wastewater treatment plant and whether or not the 1% for the arts was going to go towards that. And it was a line in the sand that I wasn't able to give up on. And he sent me an email and said he was proud of that at the end of the day, or at the end of history, people remember the wars we fought and the art that we built. And I am proud to be a part of a community that focuses on arts as strongly as we do and are known for that. I am also incredibly proud, and I think everyone is in Portsmouth, to be a part of a city that focuses on the nonprofit area so intently. To hear how many people want to devote their lives to how they can impact other people is something that, again, I try to tell some of the new counselors that the hardest part about being a counselor is that you will find yourself questioning sometimes, well, you know, why is this person upset about this inconvenience that has been bestowed upon them? And I try to remind counselors that you're actively deciding to give up, you know, every other Monday night and a ton of time in between to serve a community. Some people don't think of it in those terms, but I know that the nonprofit world the world that is looking to educate, to broaden our horizons, to bring us together, to show us some harder truths about ourselves so that we can grow as people and as a community. I know that they are thinking of others when they wake up in the morning and look to really search out ways to serve them. And then I guess finally, and I hadn't prepared anything, so I will cut it short and keep talking. But for Sean and Nancy to be here, I think it goes without saying, but I will state it again, that this has a direct economic impact on every person that's in Portsmouth. It is something that every time we put up an arch, I'm thinking of the African burial ground. Every time that we create a reflection on our history and how we grow throughout that, it speaks to the type of city that we are and the type of place where it's drawing into other people from all walks of life. And we are the city of the open door. And I love that saying because one, it gets me out of handing out keys to the city, because we don't have keys to the city because we're the city of the open door. But I think it also speaks to something else that is a good way of thinking about Portsmouth and really our motto. Doors don't stay open. They have to be held open. They have to be propped open. They have to be pried open. And the work of this community is going to be, how do we open this door to more in Portsmouth, to more people, to more ideas, to more thoughts. And that's why I'm so enamored with this and look forward to the work that you do. And I want to thank you for the work that you have done, because it is literally our motto that you guys are going to try to represent, and it's appreciated. And so I wanted to be here. I'm sorry I wasn't here last time. I was freezing my butt off, hanging out Valentine's Day cards, like my hands were so cold. You think you're gonna hang all these Valentine's Day cards on the tree, and you get, oh, we're gonna get these kindergartners and these preschool kids. They hang about like, I don't know, 14 between the 20 of them, and then it's me and the counselors, Counselor Cook and Counselor Playlock, that were hanging the rest of them, along with the rec department. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to be one meeting late here, and I want to thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. I actually should have started with that. But
Does anyone have any questions for the mayor?
no, I covered it all.
You covered it all.
Well,
That means I'm really boring.
I don't know that we have questions at the moment, but I'm sure that over the course of the year, many questions will be coming your way as we move forward with the work that we're doing. But I just want to say how much I appreciate your and the current council's support and the efforts that we're undertaking as a group here. It's a really wonderful group of volunteers that have assembled to put together this committee and do the work at hand. And there are a lot of things to be excited about. Cultural plan is just one of them. And I know that for many of us, the cultural plan that happened in 2002, 20 years ago, was a defining moment in the way we work together with the community. So we're looking forward to moving that ahead. But thank you for your support. I think that having a voice and a seat at the table for Portsmouth's artists and arts and cultural institutions and historic homes and culture and everything that we do here is really critically important. And for those of us who've lived here most of our lives or all of our lives, sometimes we can't take that for granted because it's just always been there. So we want to keep going forward for the next generation. So thank you for supporting us through this.
Thank you, Russ. And just on that, you mentioned one thing, the cultural plan, and that's right, I'm happy. Councilor Barty made the hard push on that, and happy that it's something that we're moving I envision the city is going to, if we do things correctly on the city is not going to solve every problem that we face. We need residents to solve our own problems. And the government, we are the government, everybody in this room, whether or not you're on the council or not, the government's us. The most important part of the government is the citizen. But in terms of in terms of Sean and what Nancy have done, all of City Hall, if there's a way that we can make that easier to do, the cultural plan is one aspect, so that we have something to reference to when you are, writing grants, to create that, that ease of entry for smaller nonprofits that are getting up to speed. If there's anything that the city can do, that's our goal, is to make it more efficient to do what you guys want to be doing, which is probably not spend all of your time, writing grants and, redoing all this. So if we can lend a hand in that, our council very much sees the benefit, and, we will all, so the cows come home, speak in terms of, the taxpayer benefit. And I think we already understand that the cultural benefit from a citizen standpoint. So thank you. I didn't mean to run off on another topic.
Oh, that's
but it
okay.
just,
Thank you.
Reminded me. So appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you. So we're going to move on now to the marketing project update. I see Ben and Jason conferring over here. You guys got something for us?
Yeah,
I'm going to defer to Ben. He had emailed me something which I did not look at prior, so.
could be in my drafts, who knows, I'm kind of famous for that. So the Arts and Culture Marketing Campaign update. So things are rolling out. Ads have been placed, the video has been created, the landing page is live. So things are definitely progressing along. In fact, but it's largely been in the last week where a lot of that work has really come to be realized. So it is a ramp up process. So some things have been happening. There's still some more work to do on video. There's still some more work to do on some of the marketing, but it's definitely out there and starting to show some results. I think the first print ad might have been in yesterday's Sunday paper or something like that. So over the next couple of weeks, that will continue to ramp up, and more and more placements will take place. Some of that will be seen locally, like right in the Portsmouth area. Some of this is outside of the city, so you won't likely see that if the social media wizards are doing what they do. You won't see that because you're not in the right location. One thing that has turned out to be fairly painstaking and timely, time consuming, has been to place non-chamber members on our website. So we do have someone working on that. I think the majority of that work, I was hoping it would wrap up last week. I think it's going to wrap up this week, but that's turned out to be a fairly painstaking process because we want them to look good. We want the site to have the right photos and the right imagery so it's engaging and pleasant to look at. So that means we have to reach out to each one of those entities, ask them for photos. Sometimes they don't send you the photos. If they have the wrong email address, they send the photos in the wrong format. Every scenario under the sun. Unfortunately, we just can't go pluck photos from their website. That's so that's turned out to be some time-consuming work over plugging our way through that. So all in all, things are on track. Yeah, it's been a process, but we're here. It's exciting. So the way it works with Darcy Creative is each month, after the month concludes, they have, I think, 10 business days to give us a report on the activity of the previous month. Pretty much mark a month from now, give it a week or a week and a half, and we will have the first month's results and report. I'm happy to bring that to the group and share, and that will allow us to make somewhat minor modifications to the plan, demographics, things like that we want to target, based on that input. So that's the update. I'm happy to answer any easy questions.
First question, real quick, is when you talk about the reports that Darcy Creative is going to do monthly, are you blocking those by calendar months? So like around the 10th of April, you'll have data on what happened in March and so forth, or is it 1 month based on the starting date of the project?
It would likely be the starting date of the project at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. So 4 weeks from now.
Okay, so there's a chance, so it's likely that we won't have March data or month one data when we meet next month, but we'll get it shortly after that.
Let me confirm that
Okay.
with Darcy and her
Yeah.
team, because
I mean, what-
we've been so
yeah.
focused on getting it out the door, I know they've been doing the right things analytically to
Yeah.
track it all, but I don't know.
I don't think they need to change anything, I
Yeah.
just wanna set expectations for the
Yeah.
next meeting, you know, because if it's just too early to have the info, then it's too early to have the info, it's not a
Yeah.
big deal. Just so people understand when they're coming to the next meeting,
Yeah.
that the info might not be there yet.
I'll get that to you.
Because I know we're all eager to check in
Sure.
and see how it's progressing.
Yeah, me too.
Ben, do you have the visuals that you can actually share with the rest of the group today?
Yep, I can send over, if you wanna see the landing page, which is a good indicator of the visuals, it's GoPortsmouth.nh/heart. And you can capitalize the ART if you really want to.
nh.com/heart.
Heart. That works, good.
This is really nice, you can look at that.
I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna share the screen so the people at home can see it.
If you wanna click share, you'll see it.
There we go, that should work.
So one item, it's still an action item, and I expect it will be done in the next little bit, is on that top navigation where it says go explore, go do, go stay, all that, we are hoping that the icon, the heart icon that we have kind of collaboratively designed will be up there and will be go out, just like our campaign. So we go out, have the heart icon that we've put together, and so this scrolls down. There's this, and I just saw this video for the first time this morning, so I haven't had a chance to react to it yet, but you're welcome to play it and get everyone's reaction. We'll do this live, it'll be fun.
It's a 15-second video.
15 seconds, you can do it.
All right, let me make sure that the volume here is up. I haven't used a PC in a long time. Here we go. We'll see if this works.
Feel the beat. Portsmouth's art and cultural scene is truly the heartbeat of our seaside community. Follow the beat to find exciting live entertainment and cultural events that will lift your spirits and enrich your life. We're ready for you this spring. Come out and experience the heart of Portsmouth.
Yeah,
There we go.
15 seconds.
Nice.
My only immediate reaction to it so far was just the narrator felt a little fast. Pacing felt a little fast, but that's, like I said, I watched this like an hour ago for the first time, so. So if you scroll down, one thing I did want to note on here is that we have partnered with some of our venues and some restaurants to have a night out giveaway. So each month we're gonna have people come and push them here, and this will allow us to track some of their interests and think great information for this group to have moving forward. And then we're gonna randomly select someone each month, and they'll get a night out, dinner and a show kind of thing in Portsmouth. So that's the landing page right now. I can share over some of the ads that have been created. I think there's been 2 web ads and 1 print ad that I could share today as well.
So in terms of metrics that we can expect to, obviously traffic, will be engagement metrics, so it'll give us the opportunity, I imagine, to early on start to say, hey, here's the things we really want to take a look at and track over time.
Yeah, the full suite of metrics is there. It gets a little spooky, creepy when you get into it, but we'll know exactly where they came from, both from a source, like did they just come here or did they click on a web ad, obviously, so we'll know where they came from the web standpoint. You know where they come from geographically, where are they physically when they came here, and from that you can get a lot of other information. So and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this giveaway, is we can really get a bit more information. You know, I think there's some questions in there about your household, like that sort of stuff, and so we can really kind of fine tune some of our efforts based on something.
So some of that learning obviously will allow us to do lookalike targeting.
Mhm.
Okay, excellent. Cool.
Can you scroll back up to the venues? So I'm just curious, some of the venues were not nonprofit venues.
Where is that? Is it
was-
down here? or-
Yeah,
Oh, here.
Yep.
That's where we list the venues.
What was the question? Sorry.
how did you decide, or who decided to include for-profit venues when the group was?
City council did. I mean, there was the direction from the previous city council when the funding was given to us. And it was not our request, but the funding, when the funding was released by council, the previous council, it was very clear in their wording that it should be for the entirety of the arts and culture community, not just the nonprofits. So that was a bit of a departure than what we had requested and this committee had requested, but that was the messaging from them. So that's why we have included the gamut here.
Yeah, I mean, my comment on your presentation today, which is great, Ben, is that I am very appreciative of the extra effort that your staff is going through to make sure that non-chamber member organizations are well represented in the project, because that is something that came directly from the council in their meeting last year when the funding was released for this, making sure that this was accessible to the whole community. I'm fine with this. It's a really nice balance, and the for-profit organizations are included here are kind of anchor organizations within our community, and actually partner frequently with nonprofits in the community.
Right.
So it's a really interesting mix on there. And I do think that if you're surveying someone generically in the community, having this type of breadth is going to be helpful in getting a true insight of where they're coming from and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So just to validate Ben's comment on the MOU that we have for the pilot arts and culture promotional campaign. Item 2, promotional campaign shall be inclusive of all arts and culture entities, regardless of nonprofit or for-profit status, and shall not be limited to chamber culture members only.
Yep.
The promotional campaign shall not be used to benefit any organization which is not from Portsmouth, and shall not be used to benefit any single organization.
So and we've had a number of discussions internally as we're placing people on our website at no cost to them. You know, where do we draw the line? Just because you can, you can get up and sing a couple cover tunes at a bar, are you an artist that goes on the, like where do we draw that line? And there is some local, the what is it over in Kittery, the dance hall, thank you.
Yeah.
That. Did we want to include that or not? Is it part of our scene? Is it, so we've had a lot of those conversations internally, really trying to do the best thing to put our best foot forward is really where we tried to use in the back of our mind as we were coming up with our own internal litmus test.
No, understood. I never saw the memo of understood.
Yeah, I don't know if this was done on purpose, but I did notice that the 2 for-profit entities are on the bottom of that list. I didn't know, I didn't get into the weeds of creating this form, but it's just, I happened to notice that. And those are all the chamber members.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mary Ann? So I was looking at the list of the preferred venues that people get to select from, and I don't see any diverse venues on there.
We should clarify which list Jerry Ann is looking at.
Now, Jerry Ann, you're looking at this list here. I just want, which was the giveaway list?
No, I think that's the list that you're thinking of. Is that the list?
Jerry Ann, we just want to clarify which list you're
Yeah,
referring
that's
to.
correct.
This
That
one?
list, it says my favorite, because you're collecting data from this. My
Yes.
favorite arts and culture venue includes, but there are no diverse venues included on that list.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
So we should add to this list. And the nice thing about being on the web is that we can add to it fairly easily.
I think, in the defense of the folks that created this, I think they were going with the larger entities as best they could. But point well taken, and something that continues to smack me in the face when we make mistakes. So I will go back to them, and if you have suggestions, if you wouldn't mind just dropping me a note with those so that I could make sure they get added to this list, I would appreciate that. I just don't want to leave anyone out that should be included.
Ben's comedy is something that isn't necessarily in that list of either you seek it or you want more of it, and that's certainly something that's a growing type of entertainment here in the city.
Taking notes.
I have
Jerry
a
Ann,
question. Oops, sorry.
Jerry Ann, were you referring to, say, historic homes, historic trails like the Black Heritage Trail? That's what you're referring to?
Not necessarily. I was trying to compare the list that you have there of the venues that you have. Discover Portsmouth that houses a Seacoast African American Center is not listed. There are some theaters that do diverse programming. I don't see them there. So it depends on what that list is doing.
I have a similar question, which maybe we can address together, and that is, what is the purpose? What is this data going to be used for? I understand the other questions about what do you want to do on a night out, or what would you like to see more of, because they're generic. But when it comes down to specific venues, what are we going to use that data for? Because I do think, you know, in a lot of places you've named a particular venue, and I question whether that's really what you want to get at, or do you want to get at the types of things that people want to see? So I guess that's kind of builds on the same thing. I agree there's not a diversity there. And in order to get everybody listed, it's going to be a long list. Do you really want that? Is that really what you're trying to get at with the data?
My understanding is that they were trying to potentially see where the gaps are. So if everyone identified, say, the music hall as their favorite venue, that might indicate that they don't know about what 3S has to offer, or the rep has to offer, or something like that. So that's my understanding. But I would need to go back and ask a little bit more clarifying questions before I fully could respond to that.
Because it would seem to me, though, that if you're only giving them that list, there, granted, you might see where the gaps are, but not really, because you're not giving them an all-inclusive list to choose from. So it's kind of, I go back to what's the data going to be used for on that question, and you know, that versus asking generic question about, do you want to see art, do you want to go history, do you want to go, you know, that kind of thing.
Great question, and I will bring it back to the team and try to figure out how we can better improve that.
Thanks.
Other questions?
I have a question, I just have a comment, and that is, City Manager Leonard asked staff to put forward ideas for funding for ARPA. And so I, after seeing your report and recommendations for year end last year, and providing it to the EDC again this month, put forward that as a suggestion for use of ARPA funds. I'm sure there's going to be millions of dollars requested by various department heads, but if it does, you know, rise to an opportunity for public comment, just be on the lookout for that and advocacy for it. And while I'm saying that, the other thing that was included from the recommendation was the grants for independent artists. I think I put in $50,000. No, I put in what Nico asked for, which was really only a measly 15.
It was small.
It was only
Small, yeah.
$15,000.
Yeah.
But that was a start. It was supposed to be a pilot. So.
Yep.
And again, that this money has to be spent, has to be obligated by December 24th, 2024, and spent by December 31st. December 31st, 2026.
Yeah.
So that we had to keep in mind.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Did you have anything to add, Jason? I saw you lean forward a second.
No. I'm all set. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Very much appreciated. That's really helpful to get up to date. I'm looking forward to further reports on that as we go forward. The next agenda item that we have is the cultural plan, but I do want to address something really quickly since Nancy just mentioned it. Barbara and I did have a chance to give our presentation that we gave to the City Council last December to the Economic Development Commission a little over a week ago. It wasn't last Friday, it was the week before, right? Yeah. And it was very well received, and the EDC wrote a letter on our behalf, or is going to write a letter on our behalf to the City Council in support of our request for ARPA funds. So they received it really well and had lots of questions to ask about the presentation, and we're really happy to be informed as far as what we're up to and what we're working towards, and wanted to be as supportive as possible of it. Does that summarize it pretty well, Nancy?
That's great.
Thank you. Could I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, please do.
Can you remind me, did our request include the sort of like the 3-year anticipated funding need to continue a marketing campaign, or
Yes.
was it?
Yes, it
Thank
did.
you.
In fact, so just to be clear, what we outlined was a $480,000 ask. And a majority of it was for the 3-year marketing project. I think that was the biggest thing on there. There were some things that were in there that are already being funded by other sources, like the AFTA study that we're able to do with other sources. But we weren't super specific because we wanted some type of flexibility in making sure that when we address things like workforce housing for creative economy, and artists and things like that, that we have some flexibility in there to do some work, and the cultural plan as well. Although it sounds like cultural plan funding is coming from another source.
Yes, actually, with the city manager to thank for that. When I put forward the request to the city council approved it unanimously, so there's a lot of support at the city council level for the cultural plan. But we really have to thank the city manager for the willingness to locate funds so that we can move forward quickly. So if she hadn't been willing to move forward on this, we wouldn't have been able to put that request.
Yeah. She's been
Yeah.
very supportive through the entire process, so I'm really appreciative.
And Beth, one of the things you might remember when we created that list of what we wanted, we had originally attached dollar amounts to each item, but when we ended up doing the report, of the way it was written up, it was 4% of
The
ARPA
award, the
funds.
upper award. that the
So
city-
that we have flexibility, like if we don't need it here now, we can move it over here.
Great. Just for the clarification.
What amount was funded for the cultural plan? Is it a specific dollar amount?
It's not a specific dollar amount. I think the city manager says she has some flexibility. She's finding this funding out of her current year budget, monies that she hasn't spent. And so she had quite a bit of flexibility. We will have to work with her to make sure we stay within those parameters.
And Tina, we'll have a better idea after next Monday, after.
What was done previously?
Right, and what those costs might be, because that was, I think, a purely volunteer project 20 years ago, and we have to face facts, that's probably not gonna be the case for us.
I think there was some seed money from the council initially in 2001, which is what I think it was, and then there was some funding, I think, from the Economic Development Commission for publication of the document and the photo, we paid the photographers, the local artists, so there was some funding there. But it was pretty much a low budget volunteer effort.
Well, to piggyback on what Barbara just said, next Monday, a week from today, we're gonna do a noontime meeting with Chris Dwyer and Ellen Feinberg, who were on the committee for the cultural plan 20 years ago. And we're gonna be able to ask them questions and get up to speed on how that process worked 20 years ago and get an understanding of what we're looking ahead towards, where the potential costs are, how they funded those costs. Of course, costs have increased over the past 20 years, so we're not expecting to spend the same budget they spent. But we'll be looking at what they did and what we're able to recreate or what we want to do differently. Presenting it digitally on the internet was not the number one thing in 2002, but it seems to be where things are today. So it's going to be a very different approach, I think, to the way that we do things on this. So it's just really a quick up-to-date on the cultural plan that the city is very supportive of it. There's going to be funding for that. We don't know the exact amount of the funding for that yet. We're going to meet with Alan and Chris next week, go over some detail. And then what will likely happen is we'll need to set up a subgroup to actually start to do the work on that. And I think this is going to be our first opportunity to create a subgroup that has some of our committee members on it, but also has people from the general community and the arts and culture community join in that effort. So we'll take a look at the, if you open up the back of the document that Sean has there, there's not just a list for the actual committee, but there's very long list of focus group people that just dozens of people that participate in focus groups and have their voices heard. And I think that's been very important for us, that this process be a true community process, and as many people in the community get engaged and involved with it. so that when we come to the end result, we feel like all of the community played a role in speaking what they want to see happen in the next so many years. I don't know if we're gonna go 20 years, but you know, whatever the period we decide.
Do you know if there's a place in New Hampshire, I mean, I wouldn't know if this would be Ginny or anyone at NHSCA that has the capacity to reach out to communities and say, who has what they feel is a really high functioning either, you know, cultural plan at the moment, or who recently went through this process, and does it have to be limited to New Hampshire as we do that kind of outreach? Because I think it's amazing, we have the resources of what we did 20 years ago, but it was 20 years ago. And I think there are probably communities around us that have gone through the process and have some sort of, you know, possibly some helpful hints, you know, and I'd be happy to reach out to Mass Cultural Council on that if you wanted to bring something in on that. I just don't know. I just
It would be.
wondering how we can gather the best sources of like.
So
Great idea.
I think in New Hampshire, our best point person for something like that is going to be Lisa Burke McCoy at the New Hampshire State Council of the Arts. I think she's doing a lot of work in that area recently, and I had a meeting with her and Julian Goodrory about a session that they either just did or are about to do. It's fallen off my radar, where they are talking.
It's coming up.
It's coming up. It's the one about creative communities and having arts coalitions or arts representation at the city level throughout the state.
That's for Arts for New Hampshire, right?
Is the Arts for
Yeah,
New Hampshire
it's
that's
Arts
doing
for
it?
New
Okay.
Hampshire, yeah.
I know Lisa's been heavily involved with it, Julianne's been heavily involved with it.
I think Joanne's the new chair of Arts. for
She
New
probably
Hampshire.
is, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Do you want me to read? I'm happy to reach out to
Yeah,
Lisa.
If you could reach out to Lisa and then your contact in Massachusetts.
Yep.
And even if it's just, actually ideally, if it's just a list of links
Yep.
that gets us to documentation elsewhere, that would be fantastic.
We leaned heavily on UMass Amherst, that has a really good program, it still does,
Oh,
so.
great.
That would be another resource.
Okay.
And in that call that you and I and Tina are on with Ginny on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
I had people asking me for information. So people are out there thinking about this,
Right.
but people look at Portsmouth, which is great.
A good idea.
Yeah.
But you're right, we need to look at what else has been done in the past 20 years, because it was a new model 20 years ago, but a lot of communities have done it in the past since.
It looks like we're gonna be one of the first ones that addresses it with the COVID
Post-COVID.
loans, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments about the process for the cultural plan at this point? I do want people on this call to be thinking about whether or not anyone here is willing to take on a leadership role in the cultural planning process. I know it's very difficult. We all have a lot of hats and a lot of responsibility, but it would be ideal to have someone from this group be willing to either co-chair or, be involved with it. When we talk to Chris and Ellen next week, I don't know that they had a chair when they did this 20 years ago, whether that was by design. There's no one listed as a chair in that document. So I'm not sure how it worked out, but they may have some advice for us in that realm as well. But I think it's always good to have a point person that can report back to the group.
I think we had also discussed a possible paid facilitator, right,
Yes,
as opposed to a chair.
that could work alternatively to a chair, yes. So,
I think Chris Wright was sort of the de facto
Mhm.
chair, and then she did volunteer for 1 year to be the chair of Art Speak, which was the
Yeah.
final recommendation.
yes, I remember, yeah. I think she did that for a couple of years before she ran for
She
city
got that
council.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, so yes,
And there's also the possibility that we end up hiring a firm to do this for us.
correct.
And so that role is really just supervising. So it'll be interesting to see what that comes out of this discussion.
So that adds a question to your process, is not only do they have a process or a document or a cultural organization, but do they have recommendations of any firms that they've worked with to create something like that? Because we might look to other communities who have had success with a consulting firm doing something like this to identify someone who already has experience doing that.
And then keeping in mind locally, is Portsmouth Listens something we're gonna wanna consider to work with them?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to talk to them. And do you recall, and we could probably ask Chris and Ellen this actually, do you recall Portsmouth Listens was engaged for the cultural plan last time? We talked about this already.
They didn't exist.
They didn't exist. Okay. It feels like they've been here forever, but they
I know.
didn't exist. Okay.
So can I say something? So
Yes.
much of the cultural plan grew out of the whole Liz Lerman project at the Navy Yard, at the Music Hall. And a lot of us who were involved initially were involved with that and wanted to see that carried on. So I think a lot of people volunteered for that and Portsmouth Listens and all of that kind of grew eventually from all that work. So it's exciting that we're now at a point where we're talking about something that's organized and not just, you know, grassroots.
We have documentation left over from that whole initiative to capturing all of the events and elements that went into that initiative, so that might be, I know that one like prize.
There's a little booklet, I have some.
Yeah,
Oh, I have that.
Somewhere
Okay,
here
good.
at
So
City
they exist
Hall,
in
there
there.
are stacks of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Nancy Hill and Judy Rigmont from the Arts Council and I just decided to do it ourselves. And somewhere there's a beautiful display that Greg Gathers made.
Yeah. It was a quilt, right?
It was a quilt, but they were up on frames. It was magnificent,
It
but
had
I
been in
don't,
state council chambers for a long time. I
yeah,
remember,
so. But yeah, that booklet does, gives a timeline for everything that happens, because PMAC grew out of that. I mean,
It did grow.
most of us that
yeah.
are here would not be here if it weren't for that.
I was brought back to Portsmouth by that project, because they came up to Chicago and hunted me down and brought me back. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great
See
story.
if we can find some of those books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a really impressive effort. So, that's a good point. Any other comments or questions on cultural plan? Before we go to public comment, Robin and Renee reminded me that they do have an update on the AFTA study. So I don't know, Renee, if you want to take it, or Robin. I assume, Robin, you're a passenger and not actually driving the car.
If Renee could take it, that would be great.
Sure. Okay. Well, we do have some news. They have started to communicate with us again about the start of the survey, which, as we all know from before, is going to start in May. We got together as a committee and decided it would be best to run the training, well, the question and answer session that we had planned to do prior to this before it got moved on April 14th. We're targeting that at 4 o'clock. That'll be, done via a Zoom session. And at that point, people who want to know more about the AFTA survey and what it entails, and we can take Q&A. Some people have done it before, some people haven't. There are some things that are going to be changing. They can all come to that meeting then on the 4th, and then we'll have an in-person, more of a training. We're targeting May 10th or the 12th, and it depends on, that would be in person. Hopefully we can get a room at the library to do that. That's what I'm targeting to get, and that would be at 9 in the morning. And that would be for anyone in the organizations who will participate, and if they're going to have a staff person take over, or be the focal point, for their organization, then they can, send that person to that. So that's really, let's see, did I forget anything? We are also going to be receiving training as a committee at the, or as focal points, I guess, co-chairs of the committee at the end of April. So we'll have a much better idea about some of the things that have changed this time, like the ability to, perhaps do it on a device electronically instead of, but it will still need to be done in person. So did I forget anything, Robin? I don't know.
I think just that the invitation is going to go to all nonprofits on March 28th through Stephanie Secord. And then 1 week later, we'd like her to send a reminder. So yeah, so that, that meeting should be maybe about 45 minutes, certainly. Yeah, we're good to go.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Robin or Renee?
I just have a comment, and that's that that AFTA is really pushing to highlight diversity and inclusion in this survey, and intends to reach out before the end of the month to all the communities that are participating. And we've already gotten a call from the professor that's doing that work. So just an FYI.
Wonderful, thank you.
That's good news. Yep.
Any other comments, questions? All right, that brings us to public comment, and Assistant Mayor Kelly is on the line. I don't know if you had anything, you're a public today, along with the mayor. So I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say.
Much like the mayor, I never have anything prepared. I am active in several nonprofit boards, so I just wanted to hop on this, see where this committee's going. I'm really excited to watch the progress. But like I said, just here as the public, I would though second Jerry Ann's comment about some more diversity as we look at those. I'm an active board member of SAC inside Discovery Portsmouth, so I do think, you know, there was some good insight in that comment. But really just here and excited to see the new program that is coming out and to support it any way I can.
Thank you for being here today. Was there anything that was not on the agenda today that anyone wanted to make sure we covered or addressed?
This is Robin from the car. I'm just wondering if this might be Nancy's last meeting with us, and for all of us to just, well, I can't even express how much we admire Nancy and all of her work. So I just wanted to say that on the record.
Correct. But yes, this is my last meeting. It's been an extraordinary pleasure to work in the arts. I've learned so much. I've met so many people throughout, you know, my tenure here, and this is some of my favorite stuff to do. And I'm hoping that I can continue to serve, whether it's around the cultural plan or the AFTA or in an advisory committee somewhere somehow. So I'm not going completely out the pasture, so.
This meeting is recorded, so we've got that recorded.
I know.
So, thank you for all you do. I mean, this is what really makes Portsmouth the most interesting place to be. I think it never gets old for me. I can remember, even if it's not the arts, I can remember going home saying to my husband, like, oh my gosh, I wish people would just get a life. They just always are having these meetings. There's something to do every night in Portsmouth. I was trying to raise kids at the time, and but it's just an extraordinary place, and we just have world-class, for a city our size, we have world-class arts and culture that is unbelievable. So it's to the credit of all of you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's a wonderful positive note to end on for the meeting today. So thank you all for your time. I guess, is there a motion to adjourn? Adjourn. Second.
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Here's the, sorry.